Uh, Thank you once again, Dolapo, for that informative presentation. We have heard from several experts in the market. The next session we are going to a more interactive session involving um, other experts in the market, and I can guarantee that it's going to be very interesting, very interactive. I would like to make welcome the moderator of the session, our very own Tosin Ajose.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome you all again to the seventh Detailed Business Series. Without wasting more time, I will just quickly call out the panelists. The essence of the panel session is to break down, some of the very technical things that we have heard and actually hear people's experiences. We're going to be talking to people that work in the industry, and they'll be giving us their perspectives on some of the things that have been touted here today by the keynote speakers. So first, I'd like to call on Mr. Adeniyi Adeleye. Adeniyi Adeleye is an executive director at Stanbic IBTC Capital Limited. Please welcome him with a warm hand clap. Thank you. I'd also like to call Mr. Femi Williams. Mr. Femi Williams is the managing director of Chams Plc. They are one of the leading people in technology in Nigeria, so he's going to be giving us perspective from the tech sector. I'd also like to call on Mr. Abdulmalik Mahdi from Brains and Hammers Property Limited. And finally, to join the session, I'll be calling on Mr. Dolapo Omidire from Estate Intel. And of course, my fifth panelist will be the audience. There are many times, in the course of the discussions where you can, join the conversation, or I may actually call specific people when we're talking about things that I know that they have specific interest in. So please enjoy the session. Thank you. Hello, sirs. I happen to be the only lady in the panel. I don't think we thought this out very well. Yes. So already it seems like there is a divide in this room, a generational divide in this room. And I'm happy to announce that I'm on the right wing with the younger people that think that, there's a lot of technological disruption that is going on in the market, and that it's not only happening in America, but even right here. I mean, there are quite a number of prop tech companies that have been set up in Nigeria and are doing a lot of innovative things in the market. I think we may mention a couple of them as we go along. So thank you for agreeing to be on this panel. And I'm going to start right out by asking, some of the more formal questions on technology. And my first question will be that, prop tech is now a reality overseas and even in Nigeria. Technology is disrupting every segment of human endeavor, and the real estate market is no exception. So what would we say are the most significant changes recorded to date, and how would we say that we rank in comparison with our global peers? I will start with Mr. Femi Williams.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tosin. Good afternoon. Okay, it's still morning, everyone. Because it's property tech, the second presenter called it fintech. I think we are talking about the same thing. Technology as an aid or tool that has affected every industry. Real estate just being one of them. The first and the significant thing you will find out in an industry on the market today is that the number of those boards that you see to let is reducing. Did you all observe it? That the number of boards on charts you see hanged around buildings to let or to rent is reducing significantly. We had an experience recently when we wanted to get a building for one of an Indian who chose to stay around the Lupeju, and then we went and got a property. We actually searched and searched and we got one. It was an old house. that was renovated, I mean, reluctantly because we were under pressure. Right beside the house, there was another house, brand new, that was just built, better in facility and everything. And it was after we paid 2 years, we realized that this house next door, that is brand new, is 600,000 naira cheaper. If we had paid 1 year, rather we would have left the money with the landlord and pay for the new one. But we paid 2 years, so we are committed beyond measure. Fintech is everywhere. Some of the infrastructure that will power it is also available. Big data, I mentioned the impact of it. And we all leave our footprints everywhere, from where we shop, where we browse, when we make our call, all those WhatsApp chats, they are all footprints. I read about a company in South Africa that now give credit score based on your social network footprints. Just give them your Facebook address, and within a few days, they will come back to you with actually predicting, right, your credit behavior. And they give you a score that they claim is much more accurate than even the credit score you get from credit bureau. Okay, so it's affecting all industry. Big data has been mentioned, financing, crowdfinancing has been mentioned, access to credit, whether we like it or he looked at it from the company perspectives, but I am aware that the crowdfunding, there are some models that a lot of people have tried, because if you can't invest in the company, you can invest in the project. And me as an investor, really, I would rather put my money in the project than in the company. So that wasn't a major issue, but you can put security and risk around the company. We also have a lot of infrastructure that are available now. Identity is being solved, so we now can track and trace Nigerian with BVN and the national ID that is coming up. And
at the property landscape and the disruptions, in the market, how would you say that we fare with our peers?
I think if we're comparing globally, on the fintech side, before we get to PropTech, I think the fintech side in Nigeria, it's growing very fast. When we look at the PropTech side, there are some companies that are coming up. What they're doing most of the time is solving the problems that we have in Nigeria. There's some fiber, for example, allows people pay monthly for rent. So they take properties off landlords, they settle the landlord and pay the rent, but then they make it available to young professionals who can't afford to pay 1 year up front, and they just pay a small premium on top of their monthly rent, and they pay it. That's one example of where we're seeing some innovation in the in the property sector. What I'll say is that I think the sector itself makes it quite difficult to make a lot of strides in terms of innovation. But with what we have available, companies like Fiber, like Muster is another one that allows people share their rent. There are other companies like GatePass that are visitor management platforms to enable facilities managers and landlords see what's going on in their property from interactive dashboards. I think there's a lot happening. There's still a lot more to go, but when we're comparing it with our international platforms, I think we're still at the very beginning.
Okay. Now, Niyi and Abdulmalik would help answer this question, and then I would also throw it to the audience. Now, it's been predicted that more than 80% of business interactions with customers will be digitally driven within the next decade. In the earlier sessions, we heard Mr. Ayere talk about the fact that any commercial bank that is not finding ways to overhaul their businesses will become redundant before the next 10 years are out. Has the property market in Nigeria caught up with digital services? How many enterprise touch points can we say are now accessible via smart devices? And where do you see all of this going in the very short future?
Good afternoon, or good morning. Thank you for inviting me to participate in the panel. I'll start by saying that the property sector is a very traditional sector, and I think it's because of the nature of the assets that are in that sector. It is brick and mortar. It is real it is touchable. I think it was the guy from PwC, the one that was saying it, and there's data to support that. That more than 80% of world assets are related to real estate. It's the most substantial asset. People make money from other sectors, and ultimately they would invest it in real estate. Why? Because it's real. You can touch it. It's not shares of a company that is up today and possibly down tomorrow. And particularly when you're talking about the technology sector, where a lot of the work is IP driven and possibly individual driven, because it's still quite a bit of a struggle to institutionalize some of that knowledge and translate it into something that is sustainable. So I think it was Mark Zuckerberg that was saying that when he started Facebook, they had asked him, he couldn't imagine that he would be asked a question, not even let alone answer it, that is Facebook responsible for election outcome in the US? I mean, but 5 years down the line, Facebook may be a dead company. So back to my point that for that reason, a number of the activities that translate in real estate will remain largely traditional. There will be, I think, the influence that I see from a technology point of view is maybe improving the processes, digitizing the processes that support the creation of the assets. You talked about that data around 80% of transactions. I read a report that talked about commerce, that even with that, in a country like the US, where there is significant proliferation of data and of IT, even the online commerce relative to physical commerce is really just about 30%. And I don't think, if I recall correctly, it's not growing at an astronomical rate that will tilt that balance. You would find a lot more touch points and engagements between retail offerings or commerce offerings in people doing primary research, assessing what the decisions they want to take. But when they want to take the decision, there's still that physical interaction that is necessary in many ways. So from my perspective, I don't see. I see the change being more adaptable to the customer segment and trying to relate to how the customer experiences the service offerings. But I think a lot of the service offerings will fundamentally remain the same in terms of what they do. I think the blockchain idea. I mean, I know about blockchain, but I didn't really understand it as much until someone presented this morning. I think technology like that, or situations like that, will create and improve the ability to improve the offerings and the way people experience the industry. And that's sort of put it down at that.
So Abdulmalik. Okay. What do you envision would change with in the property market with respect to how developers put, their properties out there, how they determine what they build, what they take to the market, and how they sell what they take to the market from a digital perspective? What do you think that, how do you think that developers can leverage, digital technology to support, their business?
Okay, so for us in Brains and Hammers, what we've been doing is actually taking advantage of what is available out there, what is around us. And for example, again, back to Brains and Hammers City in Abuja, we're able to sell 2,000 houses in the last 18 months. And basically, how did we reach out to these customers? Is on social media. It's on Instagram, it's on Facebook, it's on Twitter. You're able to show 3Ds to people that are offshore, that are abroad. Or for example, somebody that works in LNG in Bonny, or somebody that works in Lagos, would go to our website, see the floor plan, see the 3Ds. And where we're going now is, you'll be able to take a virtual tour of the house, appreciate the spaces, and even make improvements. So it's just going to be like buying a car. You'd see the basic flat as it is, empty. You play with frames, play with colors, add furniture, you know, and at the end of the day, it adds to your bill. You add and remove, you know, so it's very, very immersive and interactive, and it's something you can do on your smartphone without necessarily taking the time to go to site for inspection. And then we would also be giving you periodic updates, you know, every month, every quarter, send you videos, you would see where the work, you know, is. So you're sitting down, you know, somewhere in the US, and you're sure the money is being used, and you can see and track progress. So there's trust, because real estate is a trust business. Many people have sent money to their brothers, you know, to build houses for them. You know, they end up working there so many hours in the cold, and then they come, there's nothing to show for it. So we've been able to sell houses to a lot of people in diaspora, a lot of people in Lagos, a lot of people in Lagos, a lot of people in Bonny, in Port Harcourt. They bought in the city, and we were able to reach them really through technology. And then we're working with NMRC. NMRC has a mortgage market system where you'll be able to go as a client to go and basically shop around, check the various properties available, check your eligibility for mortgage, shop for the best rates among the banks, and then be able to apply for your mortgage, you know, up to approval stage without physically having to go to the bank until you reach, you know, the stage where they need to see you or you need to submit physical documentation. And so technology has really done a lot, because I mean 10 years ago, 2005, you need to buy a house, you have to go to the site, you have to be visiting, you know, you have to follow, there's no information basically, but now there's so much, you know, you can do for free, really.
All right, thank you very much. I think the next question I'm just going to throw to the audience. I know that we have a lot of people that work in the build sector here. Now, automation and machine learning are being used in other jurisdictions to enhance project cost and risk management and contract administration on construction projects. I don't know how much of this we are seeing in the Nigerian build sector, and whether any of, you know, people within the construction sector are even, you know, using this, because we know that, you know, the biggest risk in construction is cost and time overrun, and I think that, you know, this is now giving us an opportunity to be able to control or be in more control of these things as we undertake our projects. So I'd just like to hear from some of the developers or engineers or construction contractors or project managers in the room as to how, you know, this is enhancing their business. Does anybody want to take a go at this?
So I'm definitely not a developer, but I think I can say two things on that. One, I think automation and machine learning can do a lot in terms of matching demand and supply, and I think that is a very important aspect for developers who are trying to bring projects to bear. If I'm developing, I mean, let me start again. The way people develop now, I have land, I build, and then once I start building, I start looking for off-takers, or in the early stages, and then I complete, and if all goes well, maybe within 6 months, within 12 months, everything is sold out. But I think with automation and machine learning, if you are able to harvest your customer data and get an off-taker database that would allow you to say, okay, I have 300 people in my database that earn approximately 5 million naira a year, or they earn 10 million naira a year, and they all have 2 million in savings, then you can say, I can take some of these guys and start a project, and they're all willing to. This is assuming they're all willing to commit to a project. So this way, as opposed to building without any demand, you are building with validated demand, and you know, okay, I already have these guys that want to build. They already have X amount in savings, so they should be able to drop this into a deposit. And I know that they make X amount, so over 2-3 years, they'll be able to, okay, maybe not 2-3 years, but over a period, they should be able to finish funding the project. And I think it's a much better way to build, because once you do it like that, you definitely minimize the risk that you take of having properties that are not occupied after completing them. You wait 18 months, you wait 12 months to sell. By the time you're waiting that long, you have to drop the price, etc. And I think machine learning and automation can do a lot, and
And this goes back to Vespa, like I mentioned. So what you do, you put in your information and it stores it on a database, and that information is brought to the developers like Baines and Hammers who want to bring projects to bear. Another side is on efficiency. So if you are building using technology, which, I mean, it's a buzzword, like 3D printing, things like that. I'm not sure how effective they can be or how implementable they are in Nigeria, for example, in the short to medium term, but things like that are disrupting construction globally. And once you can build using modular technology, 3D printing, etc., you're able to bring your projects to bear much faster. So you reduce the risk, you probably reduce the interest you have to pay on your loans because you'll be able to sell faster. So
I don't know if anybody still wants to take a go at it. Otherwise, I'd like to just call on Mr. Adeniyi Adeleye to give us his own perspective. The microphone to him, please. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Adeniyi Adeleye. Just to add my voice to what is being discussed today, I think when people talk about disruptions, we've talked a lot today about, let's say, positive disruptions, how technology can help improve the way we do things currently. But it will be interesting, to hear people's perspectives as to how technology can negatively disrupt real estate, like it's currently doing in, say, taxis with Uber and a lot of other, like Airbnb and so. So it will be interesting to see how people react to how technology can negatively disrupt real estate in Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Many other industries have witnessed competition, what I call indirect competition. And I witnessed the demo of Mercedes 105. The car was actually designed because it's been predicted now, right, that in the next 10 years, we're going to be spending more time in the car than in the house and in the office. Because the car is going to be electronic car, no fuel. So once it is charged and it's no driver, so you can actually relax and sleep and say, take me around Lagos. So the design is so comfortable that it's a home, it is also an office. You have all the work tools there. And it's happening here. I mean, I'm an executive, and I keep telling my guys now that in my boardroom, I have this size. Productive meeting that is worth having a big boardroom, right? Probably we have one in a quarter now. So I started thinking, why do I need this space? Why do I need this space? We also conducted another study that said even here in Nigeria, half of us in the next 10 years will not have to go to work. We'll be working from our houses. So we forced ourselves quickly to invest in an ERP to start living it now. And we had a good opportunity last Thursday when the whole of VI was blocked. We actually tried it, and all of us work from home, no hitch. We did not really know that we're not all together. So it is here, all right? The consumer habit is changing. He mentioned something about using virtual reality, expert systems to show people building. Before in Nigeria today, honestly, everybody that is seated in this room, very few people really have opportunity of getting what they want in this sector. We just take what we have, what we see. But imagine if you want to subscribe to a scheme when somebody wants to build for me, and where I'm seated is showing me the curtain, the curves, the roofing. I have choice of choosing the tiles, color, everything. I will be prepared to pay a little bit more premium, okay, to it. The last one is about trend that I've also seen already is about the size of houses. And somebody mentioned it, there is only 2 or 3 bedrooms that young boys of today wants to take. Because people are also not planning to have more than 1 or 2 kids, okay? And then the amount of the number of years kids stay with their parents also reducing, So a lot of people still go for 4 or 5 bedroom. Is it data driven or emotional? I mean, I'm regretting living in a 4-bedroom flat now because, I mean, I have 2 kids. There's only one left with us. The other one is no more living with us. Comes home occasionally. Even the daughter is always in the school. So we have to we sleep in one room and one living room. The rest is just wasted, used once or twice a year. So there are a lot of disruptions that are coming. The trend, I don't know, maybe that's the reason why many of the houses here are empty. Even on the mainland, a lot of houses are empty. We don't know the research. Maybe you can give us some insight to why.
For us, honestly, we would love to see disruption in the sort of Uber type disruption in the real estate space, you know, because the nature of the beast is that it's physical, it's an asset. So no matter, the more people that have access to houses, the more people that, at the end of the day, a house must be provided, a building, something must be built. So it's not a service sector sort of disruption that will take us out of business. So what will happen is that more people, the way I see disruption coming is in the design, in the delivery. So for example, now imagine you being able to buy a house today, the 4th of April, and you know that 1st August, you're going to get the key to the house. So typically what will happen is that I will move to site, clear the site, provide basic infrastructure, and I have the technology to build a house in 21 days. So you know that by the time you sign up that mortgage contract, using, I mean, dropping, even with the equity contribution, which will be your next year's rent, you know, so you drop your 30%, you know that on 1st August, you can call everybody from your village, your church people, let them come because you are entering that house. There's no story because of what? Technology, you know, with formworks, ready-mix concrete, you know. The thing in Nigeria is that labor is still cheap, so we're still building with block. We don't, you know, we employ the 8 people that we need to employ on the site, but it takes longer, you know. And the millennials, you know, the people that are buying houses now, we are not patient people. We don't have time. And you know, you can't tell me that I should wait 18 months, 24 months before the house is ready. Now, if I'm not ready to wait 24 months, I want the house that is ready, I'm paying a premium, because by the time the house is completed, you are paying nearly 40% more than when it is off plan. So we have to, as developers, probably reduce our profit in order to deliver the house in 120 days so that you can enter and then increase our turnover. So what we'll be looking for is funding for basic infrastructure, and then it will now, from there, it will now just be plug and play, because the technology, formworks, everything is on site, and once you just pay, you know, it's just a 120-day work program. Your house will be ready, and because there's infrastructure and everything, you can actually move to house A, and house B is being built, and it has nothing to do with you. So for us, I mean, where we would like to see disruption is in crowdfunding, in people getting more access to finance, so that we would be able to provide more and more houses for people. Because at the end of the day, the house must be built. It cannot be a virtual house. And as much as Airbnb is taking housing, so from that side, but residential houses, you can't invite somebody to come and share your house for. So, I mean, it can only be for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Everybody likes to own his own house. And you know, our culture, even though we are changing and everything, there's still that everybody wants to own his house. Everywhere in the world, no matter what, everybody, that title, everybody wants to have. And then when you come to Nigeria, of course, it takes a different meaning. Now, this is my own house to drive. I mean, I recently moved from block of flats. I've been living in block of flats for the past 12 years since I got married. And then finally, God has blessed me. I now have my own terrace. And I tell you, the feeling of coming to the gate, pressing the horn, waiting for the mega to open, honestly, there's no feeling like that. I wish something we can bottle up, you know, and share, and that's what we try. We're in the business really of providing happiness. You know, we're trying to help people own this dream, you know, and so the more people that get across that barrier, of course, the more money we make. But at the same time, we're making people happy.
If we had had this panel session earlier. Maybe you and Mr. Williams would just have swapped houses, and there would have been no need for you to go and buy one. Right. So I think we should move to the more, I sense that a lot of people here want to hear a bit more about financing and how, the whole digital disruption can actually support, in real terms, what are the options that people in this market have, for financing, and what can we be expecting in this new age. So I would very quickly switch to a few financing questions, and I think the first one I'll be asking is, and I'll direct this to Nii, of course. He's the financial person on the panel. Now, we've heard a lot about blockchain. We've heard a lot about a bit about alternative financing. We've heard about crowdfunding and all the other options in the market. But I'll talk about a few others, and then you tell us how whether you think that this is available in today's market and what we should be looking for. What are the options? What should people be expecting? In this market. Now, I mean. There's been a lot of talk about online lending, about P2P lending, crowdfunding, and even things like Islamic finance, right? We have a lot of people in this room that are developers and project owners, and I'm sure that they would like to, hear, your perspective of what you think that this whole, digital disruption offers in terms of alternative financing. And of course, like I said, you guys are my 5th panelist, so please feel free to add your own opinion to what's being discussed.
That's a tough one to answer. The options, I mean, when you break down financing into its raw form, it's either equity, your own capital, or debt, some other person's capital. And what I would say is that the platforms that exist can probably help to mobilize capital from either of those markets. So if we're talking about crowdfunding, or you talk about things like GoFundMe. GoFundMe is basically is just digital begging, which is equity if you want. But it means you have to have a compelling, story to tell, and people think, okay, I can support this person. The challenge, I think, when you link it with the industry, is what the size of capital that you can mobilize from those platforms. If you're doing, if you're doing a housing project, if you're buying a house in Nigeria, say ranges from 30 to maybe it ranges from 10 to 300 million and maybe more, for depending on what you're buying. Trying to mobilize that quantum of capital from a market where people don't see you. You said something earlier. It's about trust. Credibility is important in the process of raising capital, and the more capital you want to raise, the more the credibility is important. Because if it's debt, for example, and you're using some sort of an online platform to raise it, how do you pay it back? Unless you have some sort of a blockchain system, and I'm using that very loosely because I'm not sure I understand that concept well enough. I don't even think, even in developed markets, the methodologies of financing assets remain largely the same. The processes may be more efficient because they're digitized, which is the impact of technology on that process. But the basis or the principles around lending of capital raising remain fundamentally the same. So if you're doing an office, if you're doing a retail mall, for example, the average one will probably cost you $40 to $50 million. I mean, the question is what markets are you going to tap for that pool? And how long will it take you to tap that market? Because there's a timing element to it as well, as opposed to going to one place where you can access all the capital at once. The thing they always talk about with real estate, next to location, is time. Any project works when you give it time. The problem is that if you do it at the wrong time, what would be a successful project becomes a failure. They always talk about Canary Wharf. For those that are familiar with the UK, the first person that developed that property lost their shirt. Second person bought it and made a ton of money. Second or third person. So you've got to balance with any of those platforms. You've got to balance quantum of what you can generate or mobilize and the time it takes you to do. And you have to link that then with what you're financing. The mismatch that you have even in this market at the moment is that you are mismatching tenors of funding to the types of projects you're executing, and that creates tension and problem. On the other side of it is also the time that the type rather of capital you can mobilize, and you're linking it to projects that require something a bit more nuanced. So it's until we can sort of answer. So in theory, those principles are there, but I think where we are now in our evolution curve, we will still sort of line up ourselves more with the traditional methods of financing. But when we're talking about alternatives, the alternatives that I can see in this market is really finding other sources of capital to participate in those markets. So currently, the only providers of financing, debt financing, is banks. We need to get the insurance companies involved in that process. In most markets, the insurance businesses are much larger. They're multiples of the financial services, because people are used to getting insurance and they insure themselves, and the pool of funds mobilized there is then diverted to lending processes. Again, pensions. That's another veritable source of capital, but the pension regulations we have now is still very restrictive and limits what the market can invest in. But and one of the things that the pension markets will tell you is that there's a mismatch between their asset profile and their liability profile. The asset profiles are short dated, so they're invested in bonds that are maybe 5 years, or stock markets that that liability, that asset profile is very limited. But a number of their obligations is long dated. So most people, they have to pay out. They have to pay them out in 20, 30 years. And so there's a demand for them to try and match some of that profile. The only asset that gives the ability to do that is real estate. But they can't invest at the moment in primary real estate. They can only invest in stuff that is listed. So it's about unlocking and unblocking our markets from a regulatory point of view and starting to get those pools of capital involved. That's on the debt side. On the equity side, the same way. People always argue and worry about why we have foreign nationals participating in the real estate market and the rate at which they participate, because they brought the capital. It's as simple as that. So if I'm a South African and I brought $200 million to deploy in this market, I will not, there's no story you can tell me, I will not hire a Nigerian architect. It's as simple as that. For me to hire a Nigerian contractor, I will struggle. Because it's about trust. I don't want it. It's not so much about nationalism. It's about business risk management. Who have I seen and tested, and who can I take a bet on? Because I also don't want to waste my $200 million. And it's so what we see as evolution in our markets is because of where the capital sources are coming from. So if they're coming from the US, if they're coming from the UK, if they're coming from China, I mean, it's the same thing we see with China. They will come here, not only bring the capital, but they will bring the labor. So I think we just have to play within that. We have to navigate those waters. But ultimately, I think the summary of what I'm saying is that we have to mobilize our capital and generate our capital domestically. And then we can see a more sustained growth in our ability to originate and generate projects, and also take risks on ourselves.
I see that trust in this market is a bit relative. Some people would trust an asset, right? And if there's sustained interest enough in a particular sector, you will find that a lot of people would actually, migrate in that direction. I mean, we see for bullions, we see that, there are a lot of people that have created different kinds of structures around gold and, things like that. I mean, even in Nigeria, I mean, a lot of people are funding agriculture with through crowdfunding. If there is sustained interest in a particular asset and the fundamentals look right, I mean, with what is happening with big data and all of that, I mean, and this market again is global. So there is access to finance from all over the world. So if there is interest in the assets, if there is enough information out there, do you think that in the next couple of years we'll begin to see people, indicating interest? I mean, beyond the risk that we find in the Nigerian market, do you think that that will be the reality in the next couple of years? That a lot of people would actually be looking, to put money in real estate projects in Nigeria if the fundamentals are right, without, without much thought for the risks around it, and even, looking for ways to actually go around, the regulatory restraints that we have.
Is that from a financing perspective?
From a financing perspective.
Okay. I think to start off with, there's nothing that I can say about real estate finance that just to do. But I think, when you look back to the roots of it, I think it's going to be, at best for now, automation. A lot of the processes are still going to be, because it's a direct asset class and it's physical.
I'm sorry, we're going to have to excuse Niyi. He's already indicated that he had to be out of here by 12. But can I please get a warm round of applause for Niyi? Thank you.
Essentially, what we're going to see is a lot more automation to let the processes around getting finance a lot more easier. One of the interesting things, I think, in terms of alternative methods of finance is coming from the fintechs. You see some of the guys like Piggy Bank. You see some of the companies like Piggy Bank, like Cowrywise, who are allowing people save. This can, in the future, bring very interesting methods of lending, because a piggy bank, for example, after I save with piggy bank for 2 to 3 years, and every month I'm putting 10,000 or 200,000 in the account, and you compare myself to my brother who puts 5,000 this month, he doesn't put next month. Those type of financial technology companies can build profiles on us, and they can say, okay, this guy has put in X amount regularly without fail on the 25th of every month. This guy puts it every other month. The amount varies. They are able to, in some manner, develop a profile on you, and they can potentially lend to you. So that is a potential way that you could get additional or alternative sources of finance in the future. But I think that would only still be a very small portion of it. So by and large, I think most of what we're going to get is automation. And yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you. For this to happen, I think the first one is about infrastructure and even practice. And I'll give you a simple example. There's a micro-lending institution. I will just mention kiakia.com. It's a portal you can log in and have access to microcredit within 6 hours without meeting, without anything. What do? There is an engine that we built for them that they connect through our engine to check your identity on BVN to be sure that you are a KYC person. That is, you have a bank account and the bank must have done KYC on you. We also provided access to 2 credit bureau where they check that you don't have loan in any bank. And trust me, the last statistics I got from them with the high interest is the short-term low micro loan. That the rate of default is extremely low. What has happened in the last 1 year, a lot of other international organizations have started approaching them and investing in that platform. I mean, I can be sure that if they continue that trend, they're going to go to big tickets, and it's going to be expanding. No collateral. All they do is that if you default, immediately the engine will list you in the credit bureau, so you can have access to credit again, okay? And they can pursue you through the data you have on BVN, and that's all they have as collateral today. So those little is kind of an example of a fintech. The next one that we are working on as a company is in the area of trust. We know that the relationship between landlord and tenant is extremely complicated now, because if you pay before you go there, landlord tell lies. I mean, the color, 4-bedroom, exquisite, furnishing, you know, those are your terminologies. But when you get in, it's not true. Okay, the same way tenants also tell landlords a lot of lies. They are married because landlords in Nigeria don't want to lend to give house to single ladies, you know. So we're working on some trust issue that can creating a trust partner in between that can say, look, believe in what your landlord has told you, pay, do virtual reality, do inspection, do everything, pay. When you get there and the promise is not the same, we'll refund your money, or, I mean, it is then we release the money to the organization. We're working on such solution that we're going to talk about launching it very soon. So if trust issues can be solved, if the registries, land registry, whatever, can also be automated, so things can be validated quickly, I'm sure there will be a lot more visibility to this international organization sitting in the New York, with sitting on all kinds of funding. Okay, because I mean, I was working with a team who somewhere around Ogun State were trying to put up some huge numbers of flats with less than 10 million naira per flat. And they've done their research extensively, and they believe it's something that will sell easily. But there's an Indian company, okay? The land is an issue. They're still struggling with Ogun State government till tomorrow. If those kind of infrastructure can be automated, and the investing party have trust that, look, once they validate this land title is correct, and you don't need to go through another process, this funding will come, definitely.
Very much, sir. I think very quickly I would like us to talk about Islamic financing and how much is going on in that space. And now, Abdulmalik, you guys are doing a lot, you know, you're funding a lot of your projects, you know, with Islamic finance. What I have found is that, you know, there is a lot of impacts that Islamic finance is having in the real sector in many Francophone African countries. But we don't really see that much happening in the Anglophone. Would you say that that's an area that a lot of people should be looking at? And how does this work? And how is it working for you guys? The underwriting of the loans, are they the same? I know that the standards are a bit different. And then how acceptable is this to people that are non-Muslims, or people that, you know, are really not, you know, in that space? How does it work?
Okay, so Islamic finance or ethical finance, can use the names interchangeably. It's just an alternative means of financing, because I think, especially in the Nigerian space, you need to understand the cultural relativity and issues that we have. You know, one of the key challenges that that mode of finance had, even coming into Nigeria first, was that word Islamic. You know, and it's basically an alternative means of finance where you have, it's asset-based and asset-backed as against interest-based transactions. So where in conventional finance is the same in terms of, it's a business of intermediation. You take money from depositors and you invest, or you give credits, and the bank is the sitting in the middle. So there's a cost to finance, but what Islamic banks do, or non-interest banks do in Nigeria, is they invest directly The major difference between a Jais bank, for example, and a GT bank is that Jais can come in and buy houses. So we can go to Jais and say, we're building 1,000 units. Why don't you come and buy 500? You know, we'll give you a 30% discount on the face value, and we'll sell for you, acting as your agent. And within 6 to 9 months, you know, we return your money with your profit, because we have evidence of off-takers and a track record of sales in the industry. So, so the bank is able to come in and do direct investment, buy and sell, which, because they are more like investment banks, which typical conventional banks cannot do, because the statutes and the CBN regulations setting them up does not allow them to do so. Beyond that also, they have, like I said, they invest a lot in infrastructure, because their assets have to be tied to real physical projects. And then in the behavior, they don't compound interest. You know, like when you default in a conventional bank, this interest will compound, it continue to grow to reach a point where the interest is even more than the original loan and all that. So because you agree with the bank or ab initio that, okay, you're investing, you're making a 20% return, so these things are agreed and is fixed. So in terms of transparency and fairness, the contracts are better. So in terms of access, since we have only one fully fledged bank and one window, Sterling Bank, since they came on board about 2011, a lot of people, despite the initial outcry that Islamization and all that, you find out that the biggest customers of Jais Bank are actually Christians. And I used to work for Jais Bank. I was there for about 4 years. You know, so a lot of people, you know, have access all the way from Lagos. Before they came to Lagos, people used to go there, and as far as the transaction is solid, the bank does it. So in reality, the people that have really actually benefited are not even Muslims per se, because most of the commercial transactions in Nigeria is in the southwest, is in Lagos, is not in Sokoto or Maiduguri. So it's it has really helped us as a company, because that provides us with spontaneous finance, where we have a partner that is able to come in the beginning of the project and invest directly in the project. And then at the time, I think Jais came, the most you could get in terms of commercial mortgage in the market was 5 years. In 2011, 2012, you know, a few banks and giving me very few people. So by the time Jais came, we were able to do 10 years mortgages suddenly. And Sterling is now up in the ante doing 10 years mortgage at zero equity contribution with no salary domiciliation. So they allow you to build your equity during the construction period. They are flexible like that because they have already bought the houses from us. So they are basically selling it to you at the end of the construction, when your equity will have been with them, but they don't charge you any interest or any profit or any rent during that period. So it provides for a lot of flexibility and innovation, you know, in terms of access to finance, because at the end of the day, you can give the developer money, you can invest directly in projects, but if the off-takers cannot buy houses for various reasons, for the barriers of entry that we have mentioned severally here, then the market will never really pick up. So in terms of Anglophone countries and Francophone countries, the economies of the Francophone countries have been able to understand what needs to be done, and then the regulations and stuff like that are in place. If you look at the Nigerian space now, I mean, government is just paying lip service to housing. Imagine, for example, Mr. Sonny here was the Minister of Housing in the past 3 years. We will not be talking about a fifth fund. We won't be talking about access to finance, because you walk up to the president, we need to do A, B, and C. He understands the sector, he works there and everything. So until the government puts the right people in the right places and follow up with action, just like you see, Bank of Industry is well funded, Bank of Agriculture, there's a lot of money in our Anchor Borrower scheme, people are getting money in agriculture and the results are showing. But nobody is looking at housing. They will just meet and talk and talk and talk. So the small successes we're recording is in spite and despite of everything. The land tenure system, everything is just upside down. So even where you bring big institutions like Islamic Development Bank that have huge capital that are just maybe second to the World Bank and they want to invest, the regulations are just not there. And then things like the crowdfunding, for example, you know, it's something that is very, very simple. It is just to fix karma, you know, and the money will be unlocked. It is there, so we have to do this regulation, you know, and it has to go back to government and sincerity of purpose.
Already about 5 minutes out of time, and we had promised that we would try to close this pretty quickly so that you can get back to your businesses and all the things that you have to do for the day. So I would like you to please give a warm welcome to, a warm round of applause to my panelists, Mr. Femi Williams, Abdulmalik, and Dolapo. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. And I'd like to now call on my colleague Torisheju Okoturo, who will be taking the vote of thanks.
Another round of applause for our panelists as they go back to their seats, please. On behalf of our partners and each and every one of us here at Detail Commercial Solicitors, I would like to thank our panelists and speakers for sharing their wealth of knowledge and information with us today. I would also like to thank the events team for all the work that they've done to make this event a success, and to all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us here today. I hope you guys enjoy the program. Until next time, my name is Torisheju Okoturo, and thank you for coming. We have refreshments at the back for anyone who's interested. Thank you. There's also food in the room to your right, so if anyone's interested. Sorry, excuse me. Hello everyone. Please, there's light refreshments in the room to your right. Please don't rush off. Just stop by and have something before leaving. To the left. Please note that there's light refreshments to the room to your left. Please stop by and have something to eat before leaving.